Changcheng from Singapore Management University. This is joint work with Liu Hao Ming from National University of Singapore and Zhu Shenghao from University of International Business and Economics. First, thanks for organizers, including our paper, and Erica for your careful reading and the questions. So this is a work about household, about intentional bequest and the choice of annuity. Okay. So the main motivation is that the intergenerational transfer is one of the major contributing factors for capital accumulations. And through this kind of intergenerational transfer, a large proportion will be a bequest. So there's data in the US showing about 77%, France 89%, and in Germany about 58% of net worth is due to the intergenerational transfers. And in the US, people estimate that the gross estate in 2008 is more than 200 billion, so it's a large chunk. If we think about bequests, there's actually conceptually two types of bequests. One is what we call the accidental bequests. So this is because people have precautionary savings. So they want to save enough money in case for other health shock or they live longer. But suddenly they die, so they have money left in their bank, it becomes a bequest. Another type of bequest is what we call the intentional bequest. And this is because people care about their children. So in their utility function, they care about their children's utility, and they intentionally leave some bequest in their saving bundles. Understanding the source of bequest is important because it will influence the saving decisions, the demand for insurance, annuity, long-term care, and also it has consequences about wealth inequality. However, in the literature, the result is inconclusive. Some showing there are intentional bequests, some others showing mostly are accidental. So that's where we are after here. So the major question we're after is, do people leave bequests intentionally? Or to be more precise, how can we separate the precautionary savings from the intentional bequest? And if yes, then we want to dig into a little bit about channels or why people leave bequests. Is it because of altruism? People want to help the poor child? Or joy of giving, I just want to allocate more money to my children and equally, or a strategic motive. That is, I want to give my children money because I want them to treat me well when I was alive. It's kind of difficult in the literature to trying to distinguish the precautionary savings and intentional bequest. So the reason is following. If we have the saving data in the bank at old age, we don't know whether it's precautionary or intentional bequest because we don't observe this kind of committed bequest in the separate account. Of course, we can also study the actual bequest data, but even we have that data, we still don't know whether it's accidental or intentional because there's no separate account. So that's kind of difficult in the literature. What people often do is making some other strong assumptions, such as whether there are kids or not, to try to distinguish whether there is intentional bequest. So what we do here is using a unique setting in Singapore where the government is launching a partial annuity plan to the whole population at old age. So this is called the CPF Life. It's a partial annuity plan. It's mandated for all the eligible CPF members. I'll explain CPF more in detail later, but basically it's this kind of mandatory saving plans for saving for retirement, housing, and healthcare. And interestingly, there are two options in this plan called the standard plan and basic plan. Let me give you one example. So the standard plan is that given your balance at age 55, you're going to annuitize and receive slightly higher monthly payout. But at each age of death, you're going to receive less bequest to your children. And this is a default plan, means that if you don't make any choice, the government will place you in the standard plan. There's also another basic plan. So in this plan, each person will get a lower monthly payout, but at each age of death, their bequest will be higher. So I'm putting one example here in the slides with a relatively large balance, a 180,000 balance at age 55. For the same person at age 1958, for the same gender, let's talk about male, if they choose standard plan, each month after it, it's going to receive, based on the estimation, is about $1,246 until death. But if you choose basic plan, it's only going to receive $1,149, which is about $100 less per month. But the trade-off is that at each age of death, they're going to receive more bequests to their children. For example, in 68, they're going to have 30,000 more. 75, they're going to have like about 120,000 more. So this is a plan that creates this kind of trade-off between bequest and the current consumption in your old age. And especially this kind of design create a separate account. So that's where we're using this kind of separate account of bequest to identify the intentional bequest. The first thing we want to pass through is whether this two plan NPV neutral. So we calculate their NPV with mortality adjusted, and we can plot that by each gender. It looks almost identical. If you look at the numbers, there's actually about $40 to $200 difference. It's about only 0.5% of the balance. So it's a very small amount. So our main strategy is following. Since the government is designed as kind of separate account with the age-specific bequest, we can just use that to distinguish this intentional bequest from precautionary savings. So that is choosing the basic plan, choosing the lower monthly payout with higher bequest will only increase this age-specific committed bequest in that account, but does not increase the precautionary savings to cope with the medical or longevity risk. The reason is that once you choose the plan, you cannot withdraw the money out. Only the part of this kind of monthly payout you can withdraw, the other part in the account you cannot withdraw. So that's kind of a special feature here we can use. So the key logic in this paper, especially in the beginning of reduced form, is following, that if there's no intentional bequest, that is people don't pay attention or don't put any utility among the bequest, then everyone should choose the standard plan, because the standard plan will give you monthly consumption, a higher monthly consumption until death. If we observe a reasonable proportion of people choosing the basic plan, that's saying there are intentional bequests. The main advantage of this strategy compared to the literature is that we don't rely on strong assumptions. The major assumption we rely on is people understand the trade-off between these two plans. And we'll dig into that understanding a little bit later. This is our main finding. We find that about 20%, about 18.4% of people choose the basic plan. And this is a direct evidence of the excessive intentional bequest motive. Note this is a lower bound because the standard plan is a default. If people don't make any choice at age 55, then government will automatically put you into the standard plan. So this 20% is a lower bound. We also found that individuals with children are more likely to intentionally leave bequests. In terms of the mechanism why they leave bequests, we find some evidence supporting the altruism. We find out people with poorly educated children and financially insecure children are more likely to leave bequests. And when we use our real lotteries, we have given them the real incentivized lotteries, we find mostly people allocate the lotteries equally. So it's consistent with the motive of joy of giving. And then we go a little bit further to conduct a structural estimation, follow the literature. So we want to really pin down how strong is the intentional bequest. We find out that the parameter is significantly different from zero. And the counterfactual simulation shows that the estimate parameters of the intentional bequest will imply that the intentional bequest motive will increase the total bequest or assets accumulation by 8.3% under this kind of partial annuity scheme, and is a lower bound because it's a default. We believe we make two contributions. One is to provide a new strategy to identify the intentional bequest, and the other one is to push a little bit further along the line, why do people leave bequest? Okay, now let's get a little bit more into the institutional detail. So Singapore have a relatively high life expectancy. It's about 83 at birth and 86 at age 65. The main thing we're talking about is the CPF, which is the compulsory saving plan to fund their retirement health care and housing needs. So for people, for Singapore citizens and permanent residents, for each month their salary will be, at some proportion, will be automatically get into this fund to fund for their retirement healthcare and housing needs. The total assets is about 390 billion in Singapore dollars, about 280 billion US dollars. So before 2013, the scheme there for the old age is what they call a minimum sum scheme. So basically people accumulate money until age 65, and then they're going to distribute the money equally monthly until age 85. So you have a chunk of money in your balance, and we'll distribute that to you with 20 years. And after age 85, you have nothing. So you are really live on their own. So because this kind of lack of risk sharing after age 85, the government introduced some sort of annuity, which is in January 2013, which called the CPF Lifelong Income for the Elderly. It's a life annuity. It's provide the monthly payout until death. It's compulsory for the Singapore citizen and permanent resident, and it's only for relatively younger people. It's basically at 2013, they're 55 or later, and they need to have some minimum amount of balance in their account so that they can be annualized. There's no inheritance tax in Singapore, and there's no different tax treatment for standard plan and basic plan, to give you more background. And of course, keep in mind is that, as always in different countries, people can leave bequest through different channels. So here they can leave through financial assets, housing assets. The CPF balance on average is about 100,000 in the country, because there's some large outliers. And it's about 32%, 1/3 of the household financial assets. It's about 1/5 of the household net worth. So we'll dig into that a little bit more in our analysis. Another important institutional background is that how people make the decision. So what happened is when people get age 55, the government is going to send you a letter to invite you to join the CPF life plan. And the letter basically asks you to join and to make a decision about, do you want to choose the standard plan with higher payout, lower bequest, or basic plan with higher bequest and lower payout. If no selection is made the following 6 months, they'll be placed on the standard plan. That's the default. And if they make a decision and they're going to receive a policy letter formally confirmed, and they can make one change 30 days after they receive the policy letter, and after that, they cannot make any change. So the interesting feature is that they need to make a decision, at least in our sample period from 2013 to 2016, is they make a decision at age 55, but they're not going to receive anything until age 65. So the drawdown age is 65. And then they will receive the monthly payout starting from age 65. So our main design is following. To try to identify the intentional bequest, we conduct a household survey with the eligible household, and we study the proportion of the basic plan and its relationship with the individual characteristics. To understand the channels, we using some questions from a household survey, and also we give them real lotteries to allocate to their children, to have a sense that if they allocate a potentially large amount of money to their children at their life now, so it's not arguably a real bequest at this stage, how do they want to allocate? So if it's altruism, then we should predict that they want to leave more bequests or allocate more lottery to the children who are poor. If it's a joy of giving, and they will leave equal bequest. If it's strategic motive, they were likely to leave more bequest to children who visit them more. So that's the predictions we're going to test in the survey. We do the household survey in Singapore. So we only survey the public housing, which is more than 80% of the Singapore population. Of course, there's some top 10 to 20% we're not surveying. That's just a limitation. They have log, and we cannot get in. So within this sample, we get a representative sample from the Singapore Department of Statistics to sample the household where at least one member is between age 55 to 59. And then we do the door-to-door visit. We survey about 2,000 households. Within the 2,000 household, only about 800, they actually make a decision about CPF Life. The others are either they're not eligible or they haven't got the age to make it, or their CPF balance were not reaching it. So that's a basic sense of our sample. So there is some important question I want to mention in our survey, which is important outcome. So the first thing is not only we ask them about their real actual CPF Life choice they have made, but also we ask them this kind of hypothetical choice. So the point here is that the option 1 in the slides is the standard plan. where you can see it shows you some example number about bequests at each age and annualize the payout from age 65. And for the people who choose standard plan over basic plan, we know that they prefer standard plan. But we want to have a sense that how much more they prefer standard plan compared to the basic plan. So what we do is we design a new option 2, which is plan X, where we fix the bequest at the same amount of the basic plan, but keep increasing the annualized payout. So we ask them, if I change the annualized payout to 9,000 in option 2, are you going to choose option 2? They say yes or no, and keep increase, 9,240, 9,480. So at some point, these people will switch from the standard plan to our plan X option 2. So the later they switch, it means that the stronger they prefer the standard plan. And we're going to use this kind of preference over the difference utility over these 2 plans to trying to identify the structural parameters later. And we also conduct this kind of real lottery allocations. The reason we're doing that is the CPF life choice is only about whether you allocate more bequests or less bequests between parents and children. But there's no choice about allocation among children. To give you more institutional background and also answer, I think, Amina's question, is that by default, the rule in Singapore is if you don't have a will or you don't have a nomination for your assets, it will be equally allocated to your spouse and to your children. And of course, there are other rules by the Muslim laws. That's slightly different. If you want to allocate not equally, you have to either file a will or file some nomination to the CPF. So this is something we don't observe. We're trying to know a little about the data like that, but we couldn't get it. So in order to get a sense about allocation between children, that's where we design this kind of real lottery allocation. We give each person a $10 $1 real lottery with identical number. And each lottery ticket could win by $1 million, but it's very small probability. And of course, they can win other amount like 50,000 and all these things. And the lottery ticket looks like this. So we give them a ticket like 1 day or 2 days before the draw date. And we give them 10 tickets. I give them a few envelopes, depends on how many children they have. And we'll ask them to allocate to their children, explain to them. And then we seal the envelope and send it to their children. So this is sort of incentivize the real lottery allocation. So the point here is that with a potentially large amount of money, when people are still alive, so it's not a real bequest. It's different from the bequest in the basic plan. If they allocate this differently, that suggests some sort of different motive, such as the joy of giving or altruism. And it is incentive compatible. So here is the summary stats. The most important will be the first 2 lines, 2 rows. We have, for those who actually make a choice about the CPF, about 750, about 18.4% choose the basic plan. In the full sample, when we ask them hypothetical questions, there's about a 27%. So in both sense, there are a large proportion of people choosing the basic plan. So we're going to analyze our result in the following. First, we're going to talk about the existence of intentional bequest, because this is something debated in the literature. And then once we get there, and then we'll talk about the strength, and then we can talk about a little bit more about channel and the structure estimation. In terms of existence of intentional bequest, so there are 18.4% of people choose the basic plan. So this is sort of a direct evidence and also a lower bound. We might worry about, yeah, they have a lot of other assets, so they might leave the bequest through other assets. So we restrict our sample to the people who have less financial assets. So their bequest will be mainly rely on the CPF. Still about 18.6% choose the basic plan. We also asked some other qualitative questions about why they choose the basic plan or standard plan. So among those who choose basic plan, 50% report they want to leave more bequests. So another suggestive and qualitative evidence about the intentional bequest. There are many other explanations, so we have to discuss. So first thing would be, maybe they don't understand the 2 plan. If they don't understand the plan, then they might just randomly choosing and then 20% will choose the basic plan. So we have built in two trade-off questions. It's a very simple question about, okay, which plan have the higher payoff, which plan have the higher bequest. There are about 60% of the subjects answer the two trade-off question correctly. And even among those people, about 20% choose the basic plan. So for these kind of subsample, it's hard to believe it's about their misunderstanding of the plan and they randomly choose the basic plan. Another alternative explanation would be collusion with children. So here the basic plan is giving you more bequest conditional on each age of death. So maybe there is a deal that the children will visit the parents more or transfer more money to the parents when the parents are still alive. And then the parents will choose the basic plan. So we asked some question about whether they discuss this CPF life decisions during age 55 when they make a decision. Age 55 is still young, so actually they don't need to discuss a lot. And our survey result shows the same. About 90% of people are making their decision by their own. They don't discuss with their children. And among those who do not discuss with their children, again, similarly, about 18.7% choose the basic plan. The last alternative explanation is trust, which is the topic of the first paper. So people might not trust the government. They want to take out money. So they want to hold their money in their own. So they want to withdraw as much money as possible. But if this is true, then the prediction will be the opposite in the sense that they want to choose the standard plans to take out as much as money as possible to get a higher monthly payout and leave less money in the CPF. And they also cannot explain the choice of the basic plan, about 20%. So with these kind of discussions, that we think that the 20% of basic plan is a strong support about the existence of intentional bequest. And next, we're going to get a sense about the strengths of intentional bequest. So first, we're going to run some correlations to understand the choice of basic plan and the personal characteristics. So here, the horizontal line is the independent variable, and the vertical line is the coefficient of each independent variable about whether they choose the basic plan. So you can see that if there's no kids, they're less likely to choose the basic plan. It makes sense because they don't have people to leave bequest. If they have very good health, they are less likely to choose basic plan. It also makes sense, it's related to the question, Erica's question about life expectancy, that those who have very good health have higher life expectancy, so that they want to choose more standard plan because they can enjoy this kind of flow of consumption for a long time. And we do have a life expectancy questions, but we only get the same directions, but it's not statistically significant. And we also found that higher educated people choose more basic plan, and there's no significant result from among gender or race. So we can reject the null hypothesis of no intentional bequest and support the existence of intentional bequest. But observing someone choosing standard plan doesn't mean that they have less intentional bequest because we have other source to leave bequest. It's totally possible that people who have a strong bequest motive, they just choose standard plan and want to leave more bequests through other assets, such as housing or other financial assets. So in order to measure a little bit further about whether we can say something about the strength of intentional bequest, we do the following two things. The first thing is we restrict the sample for those who have less financial assets, have less other assets, and then we run similar regressions to look at the correlation between choosing basic plan and the personal characteristics. So in this table, again, the dependent variable is a choice of a basic plan. And we can see that those who don't have children are less likely to choose basic plan. And those whose children have higher education are less likely to choose basic plan. So these are things consistent with the idea of altruism, but also suggesting those who have kids and those who have children with poor educated have a stronger bequest motive. To test a little bit more about the substitution effect. So if there is a real substitution, that means this person is going to choose standard plan and leave more bequest if they have higher other assets. So this will predict that the correlation between the choice of basic plan and the other assets will be negative because there is a substitution. And we run this kind of correlations based on the estimated housing value from their address, whether they live in a large house, whether they have large housing assets, and whether they have other bequests. We don't, either we find a positive significant or find some result close to zero, and there's no evidence supporting a strong substitution from other assets. So next we're going to dig into the mechanism why. So why people leave bequest? We talk about three reasons: altruism, joy of giving, and a strategic motive. So in this table, the dependent variable is the basic plan. And we can see that those who have highly educated children, they're less likely to choose basic plan. Those who have financial insecure children, they're more likely to choose basic plan. So this is suggesting that if their children is relatively weak, no matter in the financial sense or in education sense, the parents are more likely to choose basic plan and give them more bequest. This is consistent with altruism. We also run the regression with the number of visits from their children, and we don't find any significant result along the line. So we don't find evidence about strategic motive, but of course we cannot rule out it. It's just at this stage, about 55, we don't find evidence. And then to get into this joy of giving, we use our lottery allocation. And again, so the lottery allocation is not bequest. It's kind of a transfer, but it's not a real bequest in the end. What we do in this table is that we restructure the data into the parent-child pair as a new data structure. And then the dependent variable is how many lottery tickets to allocate to each child. And then we are correlated with the children's characteristics. So you can see there's nothing significant, which suggesting that they allocate this lottery equally to their children. And this is a consistent evidence of joy of giving. Of course, as this is a little bit not supporting about what we are showing of this altruism, but this is totally different, a real bequest and a large potential transfer along the line. So last thing we're going to do is to do a structural estimation. So here we are trying to pin down the parameters in the model and to do some counterfactual simulation to see whether it can match the reality. So it's a standard life cycle model. The only thing slightly different is that we're building the bequest utility. So the agent's utility will be the standard CRRA. And they also have a utility from bequest, which is the VB. The B stands for the bequest. In this utility function, the bequest utility is determined by two main parameters. The first one is the phi1. This is the bequest motive intensity. If phi1 equals 0, the VB equals 0. So this people do not have intentional bequest motive. And if phi1 is greater than 0, then this person have bequest motive. Phi2 here is represent to what extent the bequest a luxury good. So you can see when the phi2 is larger, the marginal utility of the bequest is larger. So they are more likely to allocate more bequest after optimization. And then we build in this kind of a standard life cycle model. People making decision at age 55, so they choose the value function, the maximum between, they are choosing the standard plan, the V55 standard, and the V55 basic plan, B. And then we can write down their dynamic programming equation. Here, beta is the discount factor. Delta is the death probability from age t to age t+1 based on the life table in Singapore. So you can see if the people die at that age t, then all his utility will based on the bequest utility at that age, BT+1. And if these people survive, then his utility will be based on the VT+1, all the value of all the future consumption utilities in the next age. The bequest and the assets will move from a very standard way that they just accumulate, have a real return of R and adding the income or CPF payout. Similarly, we can run down with the age 65 to 99, and we also add a government subsidy program with a minimum consumption floor. And then we close this kind of standard model with age 100. So the data we're using is about 600 people who actually enroll in the CPF plan. So we're using their earnings based on the gender-specific mean. The payout is based on the CPF calculator from the official website. We also have some outside data, such as the life table. This is all aggregate data, and the medical expenditure trying to match some moment. Following the literature, we have standard assumptions about some basic parameters, such as time discount factor, 0.95, risk aversion, interest rate, and consumption floor. Our main point of estimation is using the GMM to estimate the two parameters in this Bequest utility function. That's the phi1 and the phi2. We're using GMM. The moment we generate is based on the actual CPF choice and the predicted CPF choice from our life cycle model. And we can also combine the data from actual CPF choice to the hypothetical ones. Remember, we have this kind of hypothetical CPF choice where I keep increasing the payoff of the basic plan so that I can see all the choice and when do the switch. So this will increase our moment. And we split that into subsamples. So we can look at high income, low income, female and male. We have all these moments. This will totally give us 26 moments to estimate the result. To give you some intuition about our identification. So the major trade-off is in this indifference curve. The horizontal line is the payout. The vertical line is the bequest. The standard plan have higher payout, lower bequest, and the basic plan have lower payout, higher bequest. So our hypothetical question here is basically fix the bequest of the basic plan and the moving up of the payout of the basic plan. So as we're moving up this basic plan, we can see people will switch from the standard plan to the basic plan. And the point this switch will help us to pin down which part of the indifference curve they are in, or what kind of shape of the indifference curve. And this will help us to identify the parameter phi1 and phi2. That's the key intuition behind our identification. So after the estimation, this is trying to draw you about how well we are matching our moments. So this is only drawing the 24 CPF choice moments, 1 actual choice, 5 hypothetical choice. The horizontal line is the sample probability of choosing the basic plan, our data. The vertical line is the predicted moment based on our GMM. You can see mostly they're along the line of the 45-degree line. Of course, there's some other moment was hard to match. And this is the mean estimation results. If we assume the agent homogeneous, means that everyone have the same bequest motive, we're going to get phi1 about 0.29, and it's significant different from 0. And phi2 is about 34,000 Singapore dollars. And if we run this by different genders, so we allow the phi1 and phi2 to be different by men and women, we're going to see the men have a stronger bequest motive, estimation about 3.4, and the women will be 0.24. With these parameters, we can conduct some policy simulation exercise. So the point of this exercise is following. We're trying to understand, given the parameters and given the policy scheme, how much total bequest or intergeneration transfer will be there. So the numbers we report here, for example, in column 1, for minimum sum, 106,000 means that given the scheme of minimum sum in Singapore, which is 20-year distribution, given the parameter of phi1 equals 0, we simulate that the average bequest per person will be $106,000. And then moving down the rows, we fix the parameter and seeing, given the different policy scheme, how much more intergeneration transfer or bequest will be there or less. So as we're moving down from row 1 to row 2, row 3, this is the basic plan only. We force them to, everyone choose the basic plan. This is a partial annuity. Or we force them to choose standard plan. It's even more annuitized. Or we make them the real one, which is they have a choice between CPF basic and standard. We can see basically total bequest will decrease. The reason is that the minimum sum is no annuitized. And if you annuitize anything, the total bequest will decrease. And in the full annuitized case, there will be no bequest. We can also compare from column 1 to column 3. That's another dimension of this kind of simulation exercise. That is, given the policy scheme, let's say looking at the row 4, CPF life, and compare column 1 to 3. If we simulate people who have no intentional bequest and increase their intentional bequest strength to the level of our estimation, we can see that the total average bequest or intergeneration transfer will increase from 77,000 to 84,000. That's about 8.3% increase. So this is saying that given the current scheme and the intentional bequest based on our estimation could explain about 8.3% about the assets accumulation through bequest. So that's all my presentation. Basically, we show that in both reduced form analysis and structural estimation support the existence of intentional bequest, and individuals with children are more likely to intentionally leave bequest. And our mechanisms support altruism and joy of giving, but not about the strategic motive. And our simulation shows that there will be a large amount of intergeneration transfer could be explained by intentional bequest. And this is a lower bound because the standard plan is a default plan. Okay, that's